What's happening, guys? It's your boy, the Boxing Lowdown here, and we are here for episode 106 of the TBL podcast, man. Delighted to be back on a new day, Monday. That's going to be the day now. Going forward, guys, the podcast is going to be streamed on Monday, going to be around 6 o'clock. But listen, we're here in the building. We've got a lot to talk about. Really happy to have my guest here, as always, the main man, the knowledge, my father. He's right here, man. Laurie from AFTV. What's happening, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. You calling me the knowledge? I'm not sure if my boy Spencer Fearer would be happy in that. But shout out to Spencer. Shout out to Spencer Fearer, and that's my guy, man. But I was going to say, don't you think cherries taste nice this time of year?
Well, it's funny you say that because a lot of people have been waiting for your reaction to the news last week of Canelo. First of all, let me just shout out Himanshu. He's in the building. He says hello. He's been here for a minute, so big up Himanshu as always. Listen, man, let's just dive straight into it since you've brought it up. A lot of people want to get your opinion on the news of Canelo announcing that he will be facing a Charlo, but not Jamal Charlo as we all believed. I did my video reaction to this, so people have seen what I've thought. So I'm going to let you hold the floor, man, and Cook, give us your opinion on this. Canelo, Mell Charlo, September. Canelo's first fight with the PBC on a 3-year deal. Give us your thoughts.
Listen, I think it's entirely consistent with what we've been seeing for Canelo over a couple of years now, man. The guy is continually ducking and cherry picking his way through divisions. And I must say, I'm surprised at the amount of, or maybe I shouldn't be. I'm surprised at the amount of people who's prepared to give him a pass over it, but I'm certainly not. I'll hold his feet to the fire. And it's just a shame that other people, way up more in the game than people like me and you, allowing him to so-called slide. I think it's very disappointing the way he's been allowed to get away with what he gets away with. Because it's interesting, isn't it? Because you get a lot of people, right, who moralize and jump on his soapboxes about boxing. They're going about too many divisions, too many world champions, the best not fighting the best. And as I was saying to a friend of mine the other day, you have Canelo, who most people's opinion is the so-called face of boxing. And yet still he does what he does. And everybody just seems to co-sign and say, yeah, but I mean, what was it, James, my good friend James Toon, he appears with me on the DR Boxing Show. Shout out to the DR Boxing Show, guys. He said something that was got my attention the other day. He said he's earned the right to do what he wants. Now, what other sport do you hear people? Do you see that in tennis, where Djokovic says, right, you know what? I'm the number one player in the world. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just gonna, in order to win Wimbledon, I'm gonna play the number 20th seed, and if I beat him, then I've won the Grand Slam for this year. It doesn't work like that, does it? They have to operate within a certain parameter, within a certain structure. And yes, the likes of James will say it's because the governing bodies are so weak that they allow or enable Canelo to do this kind of thing. And that is true up to a degree. But even so, man, there's a certain responsibility. You're the so-called face of boxing, the number one earner from boxing by far, the champion. Surely you have a duty to, you know what I mean, defend your belts against the worthiest challengers. And he's simply not doing that, bro. He's not. You know what I mean? So he needs to be called out for it. But the problem is, people come after people like me for calling him out rather than going after the guy that you should be calling out, who's the one who, as far as I'm concerned, man, is debasing the sport.
Yeah. Shout out to Francisco here. He's put here, it's still morning. Obviously, Francisco's messaging us all the way from Arizona. He's put here, it's still morning out here. So I'm still in my Canelo pajamas and chopping up some cherries for breakfast. I think that sums it up. Francisco actually tweeted me when this was announced, and he was confused, just like me. I was like, wait a minute, is this Jamel, not Jamal? So, you know, what I've seen some defenders of Canelo say is that, look, make up your mind. You know, you wanted him to fight a Charlo. He goes for Jamal Charlo. Jamal Charlo's not ready, you know. So he goes for Jamel Charlo, who many people consider
true, is it, Daryl?
Who many people consider is better than Jamal. Has a big frame, should be able to carry the weight easier. You know, do you look at it from that angle that Jamel is better than Jamal? He's they say he's been more active, but he hasn't really, because he's been out of the ring for over a year. By the time he steps into the ring with Canelo, he'll be pushing 18 months. So I think people need to take that into consideration as well. But yeah, Jamel, the better Charlo, albeit lighter, but not going through as much as Jamal. What do you say to those who bring that up?
I mean, listen, if people are going to say to me, right, that Jamel Charlo is a better choice of opponent than Jamal Charlo, reluctantly, I probably have to agree with that, because at the end of the day, Jamal Charlo, as I said the other day on the DR Boxing Weekly show, Jamal Charlo currently is on his knees. He's not fought for 2 years. The man's experiencing serious financial and emotional problems. He's going through a very messy and acrimonious divorce, apparently, and it's taken its toll on him. There's also rumours out there that he's got a bit of a drink problem, or had one. He was self-medicating through drink, so he's clearly not in the right state of mind. So when I heard that Canelo was attempting to choose him as an opponent, and don't forget, this is off the back of what he was trying to do to Badu Jack. I mean, come on, bro. The man was trying to get Badu Jack. He's the cruiserweight champion, to come down 20 pounds, right? And not allow him to rehydrate. And don't forget, Badu Jack is what? Is he 40 years old now?
He's pushing 40. I don't know if he is 40, but
this is the so-called activities of the so-called pound for pound, or one of the pound for pound, the so-called face of boxing. And this is what I'm saying. If you're the face of boxing, you are that kind of icon, current living legend of the sport, and that's how you're conducting yourself. How does that portray boxing to the rest of the world? This is why I constantly get my friends in the UFC and MMA. They say, look, what kind of sport is boxing where you've got so many weight divisions, like 17 weight divisions? You've got 4 different champions at every one of those divisions, apart from the Bridgerweight one. It's just a farce. And then you get a guy like this that's supposed to be the icon, the go-to guy, the face of boxing. And that's how he's doing. He's coming up and down in weight, choosing guys that he knows he can beat. It's just disgraceful. I mean, like, you can allow him you can allow any boxer. And listen, I'm not saying that Canelo's is the only one that's ever done this. We all know. I mean, people always throwing Floyd at me. Yeah, but Floyd did it. Floyd did it. Floyd fought Conor McGregor when he was, retired. He came out of retirement to fight Conor McGregor. He wanted that 50-0. It's a bit of a cheesy way to do it, to be honest. I must admit. But come on now. Like, it's a very different example. Floyd, I think he fought something like 23 different world champions during his time as a professional boxer, which is, far outweighs anything that Canelo's done. You have to remember as well, when Floyd fought Canelo, he was 38 years old, right? And he schooled Canelo, who was, pretty much coming into his prime or approaching his prime. Well, okay, maybe not approaching his prime. I think he was 23 years old. But even so, 23-year-old to a 38-year-old. And the 38-year-old not just beat him, but stood him on his head for 12 rounds. So the comparison with Floyd, I'm afraid, is not going to wash with me. And I just think that the stuff that Canelo's doing at the moment, man, to me, it's putting boxing into damn near disrepute. How can you have a fighter like Jamel Charlo, who, don't get me wrong, is a very talented fighter, and I do think he will actually give Canelo a decent fight, right? But let's have it right, man. The man's coming up 2 weight divisions. He's never fought at super middleweight, yeah? He's coming up 2 weight divisions to fight for the undisputed super middleweight championship, right? To me, that is just farcical. So what's going to happen to Tim Tszyu then, who's waited his turn and beaten all the opponents?
Let's say something about him
as well. Had to wait for Jamel Charlo because Jamel Charlo suffered a hand injury. He's taken fights in the interim. He's done everything right. And now the guy's on the verge of fighting for the title. He wakes up the other day in Australia only to find out that Jamel Charlo is signed to fight Canelo. Mm-hmm. What should happen is that the WBC should, and the governing bodies should be saying to Jamel Charlo, you know what, if you want to take that opportunity to fight Canelo for that money, you know what, fine, you go do that. But guess what? We're taking our belts back. But they won't do that, you see? And this is
the issue. Yeah. Some notable examples of fighters that have jumped up 2 weight divisions before and have won. Duran and Mosley from 135 to 147, but both of them had some fights at 147 before they famously beat the champions. Mell is going straight to Canelo, not to mention the layoff and the injury. And we all know as well the last person to jump up 2 weight divisions to fight Canelo. We saw what happened there with Amir Khan.
Well, this is it.
So,
And with regards to Canelo, Daryl, it's not like he's cleaned out super middleweight, is it? Let's be honest. You've got a certain David Benavidez here. You've got a certain David Morrell. Those guys are very talented guys in their own right, very ambitious, very good. You know what I mean? They're pushing for their opportunity, and now they're having to wait on Canelo to fight Jermell Charlo. You know what I mean? We're getting this every time. I keep asking the question, why can't Benavidez get a shot at Canelo? And when he's asked, he comes up with spurious nonsense like he doesn't want to fight Mexicans because he represents Mexico. Well, if that's the case, then Canelo, why is it then out of your 63 fights, 22 of them have been against fighters of Mexican or Mexican origin? That's a third of his opponents have been Mexican or of Mexican origin, but yet still, all of a sudden, now you don't want to fight David Bennett. So what am I to surmise by that? What are we to surmise by that, though? You imagine, right, if Errol Spence said, you know what, I'm not fighting Terence Crawford because I'm African American. I'm not fighting other African American. Can you imagine the stick that he would get for that? Though?
Yeah.
And then people got the gall. Some of them in the comments to turn around and say, "Yeah, you're only saying that because he's Mexican and you don't like Mexican fight." You imagine that, Terrell? If Errol Spence was to turn around and say, you know what, I'm not fighting Terence Crawford because he's African American. I'm not fighting other African American fighters. He'd probably get stripped the very next day. So why is this double standard existing for Canelo? Yes, I know he's the cash cow. And yes, there is a certain amount of, how can I put it? Certain amount of privilege that you're afforded when you are the cash cow. I do get that. But come on, man, this is getting silly now. It really is. It's getting silly. And as my boy Shane said the other day, shout out to Shane Willoughby, he said a true thing. He goes, that is not the mindset of a champion to be doing stuff like this.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean?
Not at all.
And I'm of the firm belief, Daryl, that if Canelo wants to go down this route, and not just him, any other fighter, the same goes for Tyson Fury and people like that as well. If you got to that stage in your career where all you're thinking about is money and your own career, right? Like you don't give a toss about sanctioning bodies, belts, other champions, other fighters. If it's you're just single-handedly just focusing on your own thing, trying to make as much money from the sport as possible, do what the likes of Floyd's doing, retire from the sport, and then come back and do exhibitions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Stop slowing up the divisions like super middleweight, and stop slowing up the progress of the young fighters like David Benavidez, David Morrell, people like that who want to get to that promised land. Allow those guys to fight for the belts. Because what you're doing, Canelo, and people like him, Tyson Fury, they're just being so selfish, right? They're only thinking about themselves. And you've got these fans that co-sign. It's really like disappointing. I wouldn't even say annoying anymore, man. It's just disappointing to see fans and people in the media. I mean, I'm going to call him out for this, bro. I'm going to call him out. I do watch some of Adi Oladipo's content, yeah? And I watched a show of his the other day, and I could not believe the drivel that was coming from that guy's mouth. He was trying to big up this fight. Oh, it's a tremendous fight. It's a great fight. Oh, I'm like, bro, come on, man. Keep it real. I know you used to work for, or you still do work for the DAZN. You probably got Canelo links. You probably met him and did all the fanboy and stuff. But come on, bro. Keep it real, mate. You know what I mean? Keep it real. Stop it, bro. You just coming across as a real... Oh, I wouldn't even like to say, man. I was just so disappointed, though. Seriously. And it's a guy that I respect. You know what I mean? Respect his presentation skills and respect the fact that he's, you know what I mean, he's got his own channel and he's trying to do his thing. And I respect that. But come on, man, let's keep it real. You know what it is, bro. It's a duck. It's a cherry pick. Stop present it like it's some great fight that you really wanted, because you didn't. You know what I mean? No one wanted that fight. No one was calling for that fight, though.
No one
And
was
when
calling
people
for it.
say
I
things
guess
like,
some people
oh
will
yeah, but
say,
now he's fighting a Charlo, we were talking about when he was at 154 and 160. That's when he ducked the Charlos.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Got
Come
some
on
comments
now,
here I
bro.
want to read out here. Himanshu says, remember Canelo also ducked Triple G in 2015
Yeah.
when that fight was originally proposed. Kell Brook got dismantled by Triple G when he jumped up. Yeah, he's another example. Jumped up 2 weights, got absolutely destroyed. I remember with Kell Brook, they were saying, oh, he's big for the weight. He's big for welterweight. It'll be fine. We saw what happened to him. Francisco says here, despite all of this, I still give Jamel a good shot against Canelo. He can definitely outbox him, but it'll be tough to get a decision.
That is actually true. That is
Mm.
actually true. I do, because I've said at the top of your show, Dale, I said that despite, my despite what I've said about Canelo in this fight, I do think that Jamel Charlo represents a far tougher task than his brother at this stage in their respective careers. Um, but come on now, let's be honest, man. It is two weight divisions. He's never fought at that weight class before. And I don't see him getting it because he's definitely not going to knock Canelo out or stop him. I don't see that happening
I
unless
guess, I
Canelo.
guess, I guess the route to this fight, how it was made, was that Canelo. Would you give Canelo a bit of slack for this because he was originally targeting Jamal, right? Jamal actually admitted and said, "I'm not ready to take Canelo on," and that was when Jamel said, "Okay, let me do it. Let me jump in," and then he took the reign there for his brother. So, do you kind
I'll
of
tell you what. I'll tell
say
you what, Daryl.
Canelo
Let
didn't
me do it
handpick
then.
him? Are you
I'll
going to
do
say
it.
he didn't actually handpick him out, but Jamel stepped up to the task in place of his brother?
I'll tell you what. Rather than Jamel do it, Daryl, I'll do it because I'll tell you what. The money that I make from that, then it will set not just me or you up, but our future generations as well. You know what I mean? So he's not going to slide out the bar by using that as an excuse.
Mm.
You know what I
All
mean? It
right.
should have been another super middleweight, a worthy super middleweight. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Somebody that was
Well,
worthy of fighting for the undisputed championship of the world, not a junior middleweight. In no way does that make sense. None.
what last one on this? Who would be, because we know we signed a free fight deal with the PBC, right? Who would be your choice of opponents that would be acceptable for you that could realistically be made with his free fights on the PBC?
Benavides, David Morrell.
That's two.
That's two. Straight off the bat. That's two right there. Two young, outstanding fighters, super middleweights, who are worthy of fighting for the undisputed super middleweight. Don't forget, he fought John Ryder, okay? And John Ryder, everyone put, yeah, it was mandatory, but you know what I mean? A lot of people, the more skeptical of us will say, well, actually, he looked through and saw which was the weakest of the four mandatories and went for John Ryder. No disrespect to John Ryder,
Mm.
who, let's face it, got that shot to fight Canelo off the back of a very disputed win against Danny Jacobs, which I've got to be honest, man, I watched that fight. You watch that fight. Most people would say that Danny Jacobs won that night.
Yeah, I thought he did do enough to win. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? So, listen, man.
Mm.
Nah, for me, it's very disappointing. And like I said, I expect more from him. You call yourself, or people say he's the face of boxing, one of the pound for pound greats in the sport. Conduct yourself as one then. How about that?
Mm. Ian Hamilton says, evening, guys. I've just got in. I wasn't going to miss those. I imagine the Mexican guy has been mentioned. Yeah, you're going to have to rewatch the first 20 minutes. Laurie's been cooking. Canelo Alvarez here. But unfortunately, we've got to move on to our next topic on the show. But yeah, if you rewatch it, Ian, you'll see what we've touched on the whole Canelo situation. But Laurie, I wanted to get your thoughts. Let's talk about the heavyweight division because I want to talk about Jared Anderson's performance over the weekend, his win over Charles Martin. And I also want to talk about the heavyweight division as a whole. I did a video on this and uploaded it to the channel yesterday, sharing my thoughts on it. I think Jared Anderson had a gut check in that fight against Charles Martin. He passed it. The heavyweight division as a whole, very disappointing, which is the frustrations have been shared online by many of us. But yeah, heavyweight division, very frustrating at the moment. You've got Jared Anderson, who did get the win over the weekend, but doesn't fill you with confidence as to how long his future is going to be in boxing with some of the things he's been saying. It was a bit of a shaky performance. He was a deserved winner, obviously. He did drop Charles Martin, but he was hurt multiple times throughout that fight. The pulling back that he was doing was a bit of a concern for me watching that, getting tired, because if that was somebody else, then, you know, it could be night-night. But he passed his gut check. He got the win. Every fighter needs to have a gut check. He's had his. He's still very young. There's a lot of potential there. So I don't look at this as too much of a bad thing. I think the only bad thing is that we just don't know where his head's at in the sport. I think that's the real bad thing. But your thoughts on Jared Anderson's performance and just the heavyweight division, with Tyson Fury being rumored to take on Francis Ngannou or one of those guys next. But give me your thoughts.
Yeah, the heavyweight division, unfortunately, is another division, man, where a bit like the super middleweight one, is shaping up to be very disappointing at the present time. Not because they haven't got the fighters there, but because the top guys, seemingly for whatever reason, not wanting to fight each other. I mentioned Tyson Fury, and you know, I think it's fair to say now that he ducked Usyk. I don't care what the likes of Frank Warren and Gareth A. Davis and some of the other clowns on TalkSport say. It's clear he ducked Usyk for whatever reason. I'm not saying he's scared of Usyk, but he clearly didn't want that fight. And now we're hearing that he's going to have this game-changing fight against Francis Ngannou is the expected opponent. Number one, that is not a game-changing fight at all, because Floyd's already done that. Floyd already did that years ago, 2017, when he fought Conor McGregor. So there's nothing game-changing about it. So you can dress up a turd however you want to do it, Frank Warren, but it's still a turd. And that is a turd fight. You know,
could you imagine if AJ was doing this and Frank Warren was pushing Fury to fight for if it was opposite positions and Frank Warren was trying to get his heavyweight to fight AJ and AJ did, could you imagine what Frank Warren would be saying right now?
Exactly. And the likes of Simon Jordan and Gareth A. Davis.
Yeah.
They would be having their say. They would be being very vocal, but all of a sudden they're not so vocal. So read into that what you will. To bring it back round though, and this is one of the disappointing things about Jared Anderson on Saturday. So people like me and you and many others in the boxing game have been expressing our disappointment at the state of the heavyweight division, with the top guys seemingly, for whatever reason, not wanting to fight each other. Okay. So then you look on the horizon of the guys coming up and everyone's touting this Jared Anderson and especially in America, he's the next big thing. So we're thinking, I can't wait to see this guy in the ring, man, because he's the guy that everyone's saying once the Furies and the AJs and the U6 and all that lot, roll off into the sunset. This is the guy that we'll be pinning our hopes on. And I got to say, man, I watched that fight and I was disappointed. I'm trying not to be too harsh on him because he did win the fight. Yes, he had a rocky 5th round. And I think in the last round, was it the 12th round?
11th, 12th round,
Yeah, the last round. I don't know if that was a 10-round fight or the 12th. I did watch all of it. Just goes to show you how unmemorable it was. I can't remember if it was a 10-round or a 12th round. But anyway, and I saw him get rocked badly in the 5th, especially in the 12th, when he looked seriously hurt. That was Charles Martin. Now, if you remember Charles Martin, he's famous in this country, or synonymous in this country, for getting wiped out by AJ in a couple of rounds when he had on them tight shorts, remember? When he was saying that I am the walking God and all that type of stuff. So he was almost a figment of ridicule in this country, right? But I tell you what, with time, that win that AJ has over Charles Martin is starting to look better and better, isn't it? When you consider that Charles Martin just Jared Anderson didn't seem to know how to fight a southpaw, didn't seem to know how to get to grips with it. I wouldn't say he struggled to win because he won pretty much most of the rounds fairly comfortably, but he wasn't able to go through the gears, to step on the gas. And at times he looked a little bit reluctant to do so, which maybe is understandable if he was getting caught by those sweeping left hands of Charles Martin. But I think what that fight did show is that Jared Anderson is way off it in terms of being that next big superstar. And then you add to that the stuff that you alluded to, Darryl, where before the fight, in that pre-fight segment, they showed him being interviewed, and at one point he was in tears, and he was talking about the pressure and stuff like that. But that's what comes with being a top heavyweight. I mean, he's crying about that. Look at the pressure that AJ's had on him since he's turned pro, when he won the Olympics in 2012. The pressure's been enormous.
What about with Jared Anderson though? Just playing devil's advocate again. Could you look at it and say, look, I said it earlier, but fighters at some point in their career have to pass a gut check. He successfully passed that. Charles Martin, look what he did to Luis Ortiz before. He dropped him. So while it was a bit concerning to see the way how he was wobbled, won't this help him in his career?
I think, I think you could be right.
Even though he was hurt, he didn't show someone to me that was like panicking that much. I mean, he was hurt and he held, he did what he had to do, but his mindset, he wasn't like got hit, didn't know what to do next.
Yeah, he didn't fall apart.
He didn't
fall apart. I think it's just the fact that before the fight, like I said, he was being touted as the next big thing. People are saying, listen, when AJ, Fury, Usyk and the likes and Wilder and all those guys have ridden off into the sunset with their millions, we have a new guy on the horizon that's going to take over. You just watch him go this weekend. He's up against Charles Martin. He's a last-minute opponent, let's be honest. He came in, 10 days notice or something like that? Mm-hmm. He was expected, let's be honest, man, he was expected to walk through Charles Martin. That's what I thought. That's what pretty much everyone said was going to happen. And he didn't. And he was far from it because not only did he didn't look that good, he kind of looked a bit bereft of ideas in there, didn't he? He didn't seem to make any adjustments or show any real, how can I put it, tactical nous to go through the gears. And that was slightly disappointing. And we've got to put things into perspective. He is only 23 years old. He is only young, especially for a heavyweight. 23-year-old is a bit of a baby, to be honest. So we've got to keep things on an even keel. But like I said, overall, I've got to say, man, I was disappointed. I can't hide my disappointment.
Got some questions here from some of those in the chat, or some comments, should I say. So I'll just let you respond to some of them. Ian Hamilton has said here, let me just get it up. I've never been embarrassed about a heavyweight champion like this. He's finally being exposed and he's still digging to avoid actual competition. Himanshu says here, Laurie, I do think he's scared of Usyk. Fury can't move like he used to, and Usyk's movement and punch output is a nightmare to him.
Yeah, I mean, Yadav makes a very good point there about punch output. I saw a stat the other day where they were saying that Usyk is averaging nearly twice the amount of punches that Fury throws in fights. Fury is not overtly active in terms of output, especially as he's got older and he's got bigger. He has become a better puncher.
Yeah.
So the indications are that he is slowing down a bit. I think that Tyson Fury, I still wouldn't say he's scared of Usyk, but I think he knows it's a real challenge. I mean, Tyson Fury is on the record as saying that he struggles with fighters that are smaller and move around a bit more. He's actually said that. Yeah. And that's what Usyk does, isn't it? Added to that, he's a southpaw, throws a lot of punches, very good mover, great boxer. And the thing as well about Usyk that I think spooks Fury a little bit is that he really believes in himself. He's got that inner belief, that inner confidence, man, that I think someone like Fury, who's very outspoken and loud and brash, I think that can spook guys like that sometimes. He probably prefers the sort of confidence that Wilder shows, that he can feed off that. You know, when Wilder, they're going back and forth and it's all loud and they're throwing insults at each other. Usyk is of a different mindset, you know what I mean? He's not going to be intimidated or brought down to Tyson Fury's level. He's got his own way of dealing with certain things. And I think that's a sort of antithesis to people like Tyson Fury, if you see what I mean. I know that may sound a little difficult for some people to understand, but I think you know where I'm coming from, though.
Yeah.
I just think that sort of unshakable belief that he has in himself, where he just smiles when Tyson Fury's insulting him and calling him all kind of names. He's just got that smile on his face and he comes back with a little odd one-liner and you think, what's that? You know what I mean? Things like that, honestly, can throw the bully off. And I think that's what Fury's trying to do to him. Bully him, saying, look, I'm the bigger, stronger man. I'll smash you, this and that. And then you see Usyk just come with a little smile, call him big belly, laugh at him. You know what I mean? You don't like it. And I think also he's looked at his style and he knows that is going to be a real hard night's work.
Yeah, for sure.
And so he'd rather fight Francis Ngannou, who's never fought a professional round in his life. And Fury will probably have his way with Francis Ngannou, unless Francis Ngannou can land a punch from hell, which, let's be honest, is unlikely.
It's not going to happen.
Extremely unlikely.
Francisco says here, last one before we move on, but he says here about Jared Anderson. I'm not that impressed by Anderson at this point, but he says he wants to fight the guys in the top 10 now. So we'll see if he can develop. Do you know what I'd like to see? Not to do with Jared Anderson, but Charles Martin. I'd like to see Charles Martin against Daniel Dubois.
Yeah, that's a good shout. But Dubois fighting Usyk, so
yeah, you never know.
No, listen, you know what? Fair play to Daniel Dubois. He's going out there. He doesn't have much of a chance. He has a puncher's chance, maybe. But, you know, he's trying to secure his legacy in his own way. Imagine if he pulls off the upset, or even if he has a good night. Because, you know, let's face it, Derek Chisora did all right against Usyk for a few rounds. Yeah, so if you're Daniel Dubois, you're looking at that, you're thinking, listen, man, I'm bigger, stronger. I can punch harder than Chisora. Chisora had his moments against Usyk. If I get a moment against Usyk and I'm able to land, who knows what might happen? I mean, this is heavyweight boxing. You saw it on Saturday with Anderson and Charles Martin. You saw Anderson swaying around in that 5th round and again in the 12th. You thought, rah, what's happening here? I didn't expect to see that.
I'm going to ask you this before we move on, yeah? Because I'm just looking at Francisco's comment here about he says he wants to fight the guys in the top 10. So I'm going to throw some names from the top 10 at you, and you just tell me if you think he beats them or if you think he beats them.
Right now, though? Or because I think he's a work in progress. I think that's the thing.
AJ, Usyk, not in order, by the way.
No, I don't think he. No, from what I saw on Saturday, no.
Ruiz, Wilder, Joyce, Zhang, Dubois. Like,
I think him and Dubois is a much closer fight.
I don't think he beats any of them. Not Ruiz, not Frank Sanchez.
You know what? I know you. It's difficult to say, but people always use that term. You're only as good as your last fight. But looking at his last fight, I would say of those names that you named there, the only one that I would give him a really good chance against is Dubois. I don't think he's ready for them, man, yet. I think that's what Saturday showed. And I think that, let's be honest, he is only 23. So like I said, I don't want to be too harsh. That fight that he had on Saturday might be a blessing in disguise, because that fight there showed that he's not what people think he is. Not yet, anyway. He's definitely got potential. He's definitely got the physical attributes, but he's not there yet. And I think that Saturday showed that in abundance. Because like I said, it wasn't just the fact that he couldn't get Charles Martin out of there. It's the fact that when things got a bit sticky, man, he looked bereft of ideas in there. Yeah. He didn't seem to know how to cope with Charles Martin's movement, which wasn't great. I mean, it wasn't Usyk-style movement, was he? He was just moving away from him and he couldn't cut the ring off. Basic things like that. So,
Shout out to Boxing with the Man them in the chat, man. My brother, good to see you here, bro. He says here, I'm happy to see you back doing lives. It feels good to be back doing lives, bro.
Yeah,
we need to get you on the channel as well, man. Big up to Boxing with the Man them. Francisco says here that Matchroom just said that the date and venue for Rodriguez and Sonny Edwards will be announced soon, which is some good news there. Bam Rodriguez.
Good news for Sonny Edwards, because he's if he does beat Bam Rodriguez, he'll be able to go out on a date with Clarissa. So that's extra motivation for him, man. Imagine that. Winning the World Cup, unifying the belts, and then to top it all off, going out on a date with the GOAT, the greatest woman of all time, Clarissa Shields. Surely that's a motivation of the next level, the next tier.
Well, it kind of segues into...
That's a very good fight, actually. That's a very good fight.
Kind of segues into our next segment here of the show, and that is obviously, I saw you guys do the live for the fight when it was actually going on. Savannah Marshall becoming undisputed champion. I'm not going to butcher the American girl's name, no disrespect. But Savannah Marshall got the win, points decision. I'll put here in the title of this video, should Savannah Marshall go to the USA to rematch Clarissa Shields? Now, this shouldn't even be a question for me. But, Savannah Marshall got the win. Was you impressed with it? Does she do any better in a rematch against Shields as a pro, of course, because she did beat her as an amateur? But yeah, just your thoughts on that performance and just the interaction afterwards between Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields. Because for me, I was quite surprised to see Savannah Marshall dictating the terms as to, the fight should be over here, how much you paying me to go over there. And it's like, remember, you lost, like you did lose to Clarissa Shields last time out. But is she looking at it like, look, I've got the majority of the crowd here. I will make more money here. You've actually had to come over here. So, that's why we're doing it here. Do you agree with her in that sense? But for me, I think she should go to America and rematch Shields, if that is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, first up, I'll talk about the fight on Saturday. Franchon Cruz-Dezurn defending super middleweight belts against Savannah Marshall. I thought it was a entertaining, not the most technical of fights.
I think it was yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good fight to watch in that sense, but it was quite intriguing. It was quite entertaining. I think Savannah won. I think I gave Franchon Cruz the first 2 rounds, and I think I had the third round a draw. But then from the 4th round on, I think Savannah kind of established her jab and showed the better quality of work, landed the cleaner punches, especially as Franchon started to tire in those middle rounds as well. So I think she was a worthy winner. Now, in terms of Clarissa Shields, if you're Clarissa Shields, first and foremost, and you're watching that, you're not going to be exactly frightened of what you saw, right? It's not going to be intimidated. But with Clarissa, it's a strange one because I do think, as much as I love Clarissa Shields as a fighter, and I really like her as a person as well outside the ring, I think at times, man, she does tend to do things that you scratch your head and you think, could you have conducted yourself a bit differently there? So, for example, I found it a little remiss of her to turn up at the press conference and start calling Savannah Marshall out. At the end of the day, you've got a win over Savannah Marshall. You know what I'm saying? So I know she was there to support Franchon, but she allowed herself to get baited, you know what I mean? I'm thinking to myself, like, you've got a win over Savannah. Everyone recognizes you as a GOAT. You've not got to go chasing Savannah Marshall. And it was almost like she was a challenger calling Savannah Marshall out. You know what I mean? And I just thought to myself, if I was in your position, I would probably have turned up to the press conference and allowed other people to press the issue. And then said, you know what I mean? Congratulate Savannah Marshall on her win and say, look, at the end of the day, man, you know what? If you want the rematch, I beat you already, fair and square, in your own country. If we're going to fight again, we're going to do it in my country. But instead of that, she got embroiled in this back and forth. And I just thought that wasn't really necessary because you got the win over Savannah. You know what I mean? And Savannah Marshall was there. If you looked at the body language of the two, in other words, right, you would have thought that Savannah won that fight last year, wouldn't you? Because Savannah was smiling, making the odd sarcastic comment. And then you had Clarissa Shields getting all animated, standing up, throwing insults. You know what I mean? Talking at the top of her voice, looking really upset and irate. And I think, rah, Savannah Marshall's really got under your skin, but she shouldn't do it. It should be the other way around.
Yeah.
So that was a weird one for me. But in terms of the actual performance, yes, I thought Savannah Marshall was the worthy winner. Fair play to her. She did well. She got the win against a rough, tough opponent who came to win herself. But if you're Clarissa Shields or Clarissa Shields training staff and stuff like that, you look at that fight, you're not going to be that worried about taking her on again, even though you would have to step up in weight again, you know what I mean? Because you'd have to go up to super middleweight. So I think that would be the only concern, really, how much weight you're going to give away. But Clarissa doesn't even have to fight Savannah Marshall again. You know what I mean? There's other challenges for her out there. I think Savannah Marshall is the most logical, though, especially when you consider the paucity of top-level fighters in the women's game. But it's how they make that fight happen. Because, as you said, Daryl, why would you want to come here again if you're the champion? You've beaten Savannah Marshall the first time around on her own ground, or pretty much so. Okay, Savannah Marshall's from the Northeast. They fought in London. But you know what I'm saying. So I don't blame Clarissa for saying, no, you got to fight in America. Now, economically, it might make more sense to fight here because especially in women's boxing, it seems that the big money is in this country rather than America. But for a fight of that magnitude, though, those two fighting for the undisputed super middleweight championship of the world, I'm sure she could get the right backing for it, either in America or maybe even go neutral, go to Saudi Arabia.
Was there
Although
the
Saudis would countenance having two women fighters. I'm not sure they'd be towards that. But certainly In America, she should fight her in America.
Was there any, before we move on, was there any, I don't know if you've already answered this, was there any indication whatsoever that Savannah Marshall could change that result if they were to meet again?
I didn't really see enough in that fight to convince me that she could beat Clarissa. No, to be honest. I mean, I still saw a couple of faults of Savannah Marshall. Like she's got this weird style where she's very tall.
Yeah.
For the weight and so forth, a lot taller than Franchon was. Yet she was lowering her head, giving up her height, and throwing her jab from a crouch, which I thought was strange. You know what I mean? Given that she's a lot taller fighter and the jab would be quite an effective weapon against somebody like Franchon who's trying to bulldoze her way in. So the obvious tactic would be to employ or deploy a stiff jab to counter that. But she didn't really even get that going until round 4-5. When, you know, I mean, she'd have really lost a couple of the early rounds. So you look at things like that and you think, does she have the boxing skill to beat Clarissa? I don't think she has, to be honest.
I didn't see anything to suggest that result would change if they were to have a rematch, to be honest. Even if
I never once on Saturday did I look at that fight and think, wow, man, Savannah Marshall, she's going to beat Clarissa next time. No way. I didn't see that at all.
Well, listen, we're in a we're in July right now, and we already know July is a big month for boxing. We've got a lot to look forward to, and it starts this weekend, really. You know, we had good fights last weekend, but this weekend, the welterweights, that's where the focus is going to be. As Francisco's comment here says, Ortiz versus Stanionis on Saturday, huge fight. Not sure where Ortiz's career is headed right now. He was calling for a title shot a year or two ago, but Stanionis is a good fight. It's a very good fight.
Very good.
This point about Virgil Ortiz, about where his career is, a couple of years ago, man, Virgil Ortiz, and it's not really that much of a fault of its own. I guess it's due to health issues and everything else, some things that he can't control. But, you know, a couple of years ago, Ortiz, he was prospect of the year. He looked destructive. He was, you know, phenomenal. He still is these things. But I guess that aura has gone a little bit due to, you know, the health issues he's had to suffer. The fact he has been out of the ring and, you know, the danger that's in front of him with Stanionis. I mean, do you still get that sense of awe with Virgil Ortiz? Can he still fulfill that potential that, you know, we once maybe had of him? And this fight this weekend, man, how do you see it going? Because Stanionis is a big threat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in answer to your first question, I'll probably be able to give you a clearer indication when the fight takes place. I mean, I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but the reason why I say that is because Virgil Ortiz has cancelled a couple of fights, hasn't he? Because of health issues he's had. Now, if I'm reading correctly, it would appear that some of the health issues he had seem to be because of his attempts to make the weight. So he's 25 now, I think, going on 26. Yeah, he's been a career-long welterweight so far. Could it be that his body is telling him you need to move up in weight? Because I think he's 5'10". It's quite tall for a welterweight.
5'10", yeah.
He's quite stocky in the shoulders and stuff like that. You know, I mean, he's not like really slim, is he? So he probably struggles to make the weight, and he's a growing man, isn't he? You're still kind of, wouldn't say growing, but filling out a little bit, shall we say, at 25. So it could well be that after this fight, he may need to see how it goes and maybe contemplate a move up to junior middleweight, which would be a shame in a way because, you know, he's highly touted at welterweight and he's only 1 or 2 fights away, I think, from getting a world title shot. And if he beats Stanionis on Saturday...
How do you see him beating Stanionis? Do you see him beating him this weekend?
I think he does have the edge. I think it's a great test for him because Stanionis is unbeaten. I think Stanionis had something like 15 fights. He's won 14. I think there's 1 no contest in there, 9 KOs. He's looked very good so far. I saw his last fight against, is it Butayev, where he won on points? That was a close fight, actually.
Good win, yeah.
But it was a very good fight. And Stanionis is one of those guys, man. He's going to keep coming. So, yeah, that is a very good opponent. But Virgil Ortiz, I've got to say, he looks like him and Boots Ennis are the 2 standout guys at the welterweight at the moment. And when you consider that division is stacked with talent, it goes to show you how good these guys are. I mean, Virgil Ortiz, I think he's got something like 100% KO, isn't he? 19 fights, 19 wins inside the distance, which is extremely impressive. He is quite hittable though, Virgil Ortiz. Even when he fought Michael McKinson, and he got a good win over Michael McKinson in the end. But there was a couple of rounds, man, where McKinson was teeing off on him a little bit. I was quite surprised, and I
That was
thought to
always going to
myself,
be that was always going to be difficult stylistically.
yeah. But I thought if McKinson's able to land on you like that, what happens when you start, you know what I mean, stepping up the levels and you're going in against guys like Stanionis, Boots, and people like that in the future? He's talking about he wants the winner of Errol Spence and Crawford. So yeah, man, this is a really good fight. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, listen, what I'll say is that Jerome Ennis is also in action this weekend. I guess amongst a lot of the boxing fans out there, if you were to rank the two of them as to who you believe may go further at this stage, I guess more people would say Jerome Ennis. However, Virgil Ortiz has definitely fought the tougher competition.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's correct. It's interesting with Ennis. He was going on like a steam train, wasn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Blowing everyone out of there. And then in his last fight, he fought a Russian guy. And I
Glad you're back in there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I was doing this on my laptop and all of a sudden it's just gone dead. And it didn't give me any indication that the battery was running down. So I'm not quite sure what's happened there.
That's all good. We can still hear you loud and clear. Very
uh,
well.
yeah, I was talking about Jerome Boots Ennis. And I think I said that in his last fight, he fought a Russian guy that moved quite well and had good boxing ability. And whilst Jerome Ennis won pretty much every round, he didn't look as impressive as he'd done in previous fights. Far from it, in fact. So was he a little exposed in that last fight? You don't know, you see. So sometimes it happens in boxing, innit? Just as you're getting super excited about these guys, then they lay an egg in one of their fights. You think, hang on, is he as good as we thought he was? But listen, I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think he is as good as we think he is. I think that was possibly, if not a bad night, but a not so good night at the office that just reins him in a little bit. So I guess if you're going to, you know what I mean, be strict in terms of the two fighters' careers so far, you would have to say that probably Virgil Ortiz is edging it, isn't he, in terms of
Yeah.
prospect?
Yeah.
He's had the fights and he's looked slightly the more impressive. But make no mistake, these are two high quality guys, and probably both of them are going to be champions of the future.
I think it's very important for Virgil Ortiz to continue his trajectory because Golden Boy as a whole, they need this from him. We see what's going on with them at the moment. They need Virgil Ortiz to continue his rise. And I think he's good enough to do that. I think he is. I think he will win at the weekend, depending on how he looks, how he feels physically. But I've got him to win this. And yeah, like I said, for Golden Boy, this is huge for them.
It is. It is as huge for them as it is for Virgil Ortiz, dare I say, because a lot of their top guys have left them. I mean, one recently, one of the biggest, if not the biggest fighter in their stable, Ryan Garcia.
Trying to
He's
get out.
trying to get out of that situation. He's now being trained by Derek James as well. So he's trying to extricate himself from that whole Golden Boy setup.
Yeah.
So it's very important for them, as it is for Virgil Ortiz. I think I will be watching keenly in this fight because, like I said, he's had to pull out of his last couple of fights of health issues. You don't know how he's going to look in this fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'll be watching closely to see if there's any lasting effects from that illness that he had, which I was told at the time that was quite a serious illness.
Yeah.
Could be career debilitating, is what I was told. So hopefully he's okay. He comes through this one, and we'll see how it goes. But he is up against a very good opponent in Stanionis, who will push him all the way, I believe.
Any Jerome Ennis is also in action this week. It's great to have them both in action on the same weekend, you know, like seeing them both fighting. But the plan is, you know, the objective, the ultimate goal would be to see them two in the ring with each other. Don't fancy any sort of particular upset here this weekend with regards to Jerome Ennis. But do we see
Mind you, the guy he's fighting,
I don't know much about him, I have to be honest.
Yeah, I saw his last fight. He beat another American prospect called Rashidi Ellis. I think his name's Romain Villa. Romain Villa.
Romain Villa, yeah.
I saw his last fight, and he was behind on points, but then what happened was he's a big puncher, and he kept forcing Rashidi Ellis back, and then he dropped him heavily, and won a somewhat disputed decision. But to be fair to him, he was backing Ellis up a lot in that fight. Ellis was wary of the punch power. He dropped him heavily, hurt him after that as well. And Ellis sort of just made it over the line. And then he lost the points decision. So at the time, I think Ellis was complaining, saying he'd done enough during the previous rounds to get the win. But the way Romain Villa finished the fight, that's probably what got him the decision in the eyes of the judges. So he will be a decent opponent because he can punch, man. And he's coming in this fight off the back of a career best win, and he's talking very confidently. So we'll see how that goes. So 2 fights that I'm really looking forward to this weekend, actually.
Yeah, like I said, Kickstart's a great month for boxing, man. July. We all know what's coming towards the end of July. But yeah, you know, this Kickstart's off a great month for boxing. Let's just hope that, you know, the heavyweights can take note of these fights that are being made and can start to shape up, man. But listen, we've reached our limit today, man.
I would just say, Daryl, there's a lot of good things going on in boxing.
There is.
Look at it logically. We've had a very good year. We've had some very good fights. Yeah. However, that is tempered by my disappointment with what's happening in the heavyweight division. And let's face it, the heavyweight division is the flagship division.
That's the glamour division.
That's exactly. And I'm also disappointed with what's going on with the so-called cash cow face of boxing, the way he's conducting his career right now. To me, personally, as a boxing fan, I'm disappointed with it. I mean, people tend to have a go at me, right, in comments. And listen, they can do that all they want. I'm not going to back down from what I say. I firmly believe it. And I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it with conviction. I do like Canelo as a fighter. I do admire his skills. I think he's a great fighter, which makes it even more disappointing than when I see him do things like this. Because I'm thinking, bro, like, come on. Like, to me, I'll be honest with you, Daryl, Benavidez is not unbeatable, is it?
Yeah, I think he could beat Benavidez, in my opinion.
On a good day, he could beat, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think if they was to fight in September, my money would be on Benavidez. However, that is only because Benavidez is a younger, stronger man, you know, more in his prime. I think if Canelo got his tactics right, given how good he is, he could on any given day win that fight. So I don't see what the problem is with fighting the best guys. So what I am seeing, I think, from Canelo is a guy that's just trying to navigate the twilight of his career.
Absolutely.
To his own ends.
Absolutely.
And what disappoints me is that the fans out there, right, and some of the people involved in the media, both mainstream and social media, just kowtow to this guy and just let him get away with it. And of course, the governing bodies as well. Just give him carte blanche to do what he wants. And then if you dare to criticize, you're a hater, you don't know what you're talking about, you're a casual, and you're like, bro, stop that, man. Like, come on now. It's obvious what we're saying, you know what I mean? It's there in front of your eyes. The guy's clearly ducking fighters, cherry picking his way through divisions and fighting guys that he pretty much knows he's going to beat, putting John Ryder in a shoebox ring, you know what I mean? And stuff. Like, come on now, you know what I mean? It's just not on.
Ian, you know? if you're still here, we got a little bit extra for you there with regards to the Canelo rant. But yeah, it's not even a rant. I think it's just you're just preaching, just talking the truth. It's not even a rant, to be fair.
Because I like Tyson Fury for his shenanigans as well. It's not haterade, man. It's just the truth. But a lot of people don't want to speak the truth because they don't want to appear a certain way. And I called out Ade earlier, Ade Oladipo, right? And he's a prime example of what I'm talking about. It's almost as if he's frightened to go on the record and say the truth, because he's probably thinking, oh, if I've got to approach these guys in future for interviews or whatever, they're probably going to rebuff me. But at the same time, given your status in boxing as a media personality and that, you are taking the path of least resistance. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it, man. Like, to me, these things are obvious and you're not calling it out. You're trying to make out like, oh, well, what a great fight. Oh, this is an amazing... Come on, bro. It is what it is. You know what it is. We all know what it is, man. Just talk the business, bro. Don't be afraid to say what you know you should be saying. You know what I mean?
I hear that. 100% loud and clear, man.
Fanboy, not as a proper media pundit or whatever you're supposed to be. You're just coming across as somebody, man, that's out there to push a certain narrative. But people like me and you, Daryl, can see right through it. And that's what's so disappointing, man.
Big up Punch Smollett in the building. He's late. You're going to have to watch the video back, Punch Smollett, but big up, bro. We're going to lock this one off, but the last comment here from Francisco, he's put here, good work, brothers. When is the next live watch-along on TBL or DR? Well, I haven't got a live watch-along scale. I don't really do too much live watch-alongs on this channel, but I know that you do them over on DR, Laurie.
Yeah, we're looking at the possibility of doing a live watch-along for the fights this weekend. I've got to have a chat with my DR boxing brothers. We do have a show on Wednesday. I know I'm plugging it remorselessly, Daryl, sorry. But if you guys can tune into that on Wednesday, we should know by then what we're going to do. But yeah, hopefully we'll do a live stream of one of the fights or both of them this weekend.
Yeah. Listen, that wraps up for today, man. Shout out to everybody in the comments and the chat. It's been good having you guys here. Don't forget, we'll be back up. We're here on Mondays now. Unless that changes, I'll let you know. But we'll be here on Mondays at this time. Kind of suits both of us more for convenience. So big up to everybody in the chat. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way out, guys. And we'll catch you on the next show next week. Peace out.
Take care. See you soon.